Welcome everyone. Um, Last week we did the first week of live sales training, and we had John here on last week, and he kind of laid out the foundation of sales and kind of like a history and an overview. Just a lot of how do I want to say it? Just I guess
Foundational.
yeah, foundational. Just a lot of foundational work to sales and how that all ties together. So for the next 2 weeks, so this is week two, we're doing 4 weeks total. We're going to start getting into the nitty gritty of things, and we're going to start, really doing a deep dive of sales in general, sales training. John has a lot of stuff planned. I already talked to him about that. So, last week, like I said, we did the video. John said he had a lot of good feedback on that. So, if you guys haven't seen that video yet, just go ahead and check it out. If you look through our old posts, I'm sure you can find the replay. But sorry, I got a message here. So um, I'll let you just take over, John, because you know what you want to say.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I think
It's a
last week
pleasure.
went really well. We covered a lot of stuff. Again, it was just foundational. If I had to carry one thing over from last week, that we need to have a process. There's a process for everything, and in that process, we need to be customer centric, and that's putting the customer first. And so it really makes a difference. I mean, customers know too. And so, as we move forward, again, if you weren't here last week, my name is John Ellis. I do a lot of different things. I have the pleasure of teaching indoor air quality for Daikin and Manna Goodman. I'm a coach and service trainer for the New Flat Rate. I have a consulting business, and I do product development, and I'm a product ambassador for Dust Free. So that's the quick version. We got a lot to cover today. And so, as we transition into kind of uh, uh, the meat and potatoes of why we're all here, I'm going to give you a quick layout on what we're going to cover today. Did you want to say something, Kenny?
Yeah, I was gonna say last week we just did like questions in the comments. So this week what we're doing is we're gonna do a live panel. So if anybody's watching right now, you can join. The co-
Yep,
or
I just dropped the link in the comments as well.
Yeah. So if you just look through the comments, sometimes it's hard to see the comments on live. I don't know if we should make an extra post. That's up to you. But it's the link to join is in the comments. So yeah, if anyone wants to hop on and ask any questions, we're gonna do it that way. So do a panel, see if anyone jumps on.
Awesome. Shall we?
Yep.
Yep.
Uh, so this week, I'm going to cover a few topics, and I'm going to start off with knowing your numbers. We're going to talk a little bit about KPIs. In order to have a good sales process, you have to know what your target is. You could sell stuff all day long, but if you're not selling one enough volume or selling it for the right price, then it's a losing proposition. So we're going to go over different KPIs and what they mean. We're also going to go over some basic business terms as far as gross profit, net profit, EBITDA, and just some basic definitions on what those look like. We're going to talk a little bit about how much does it cost to put a truck in the driveway for an hour. I go all over the country and work with companies on their sales process, and a lot of times, I get in their books and we talk about where they're at and where they want to be, what their target revenue is, and one of the questions I said, well, do you know how much it costs for you to put a truck in the driveway? And even more, do you know how much it costs to put a truck in the driveway for the first hour? Because that's the most expensive hour that it costs a company to dispatch a truck. And I was flabbergasted to hear how many companies don't know that number. And so that's a good number to start with. Because sales is great, but we need to be profitable in those sales. And then we're going to talk about a couple different ways uh, to figure out a billable hour per technician. We're going to keep it simplified because if you talk to different accountants and different folks, I mean, you can dissect this every which way from Sunday to really get down to the nitty gritty, down to the penny. But for what we're doing, we don't really need to do that. We're going to talk about some categories of business. And what I mean by that is in our businesses, and we're looking at sales and the revenue from sales. Every dollar that is in that revenue from sales is allocated to go somewhere. And we need to know where. And of course, this is not the end all be all. It depends on who you ask, how you should delegate where monies goes, and how you dissect the sales revenue and where that money is going and how it's going. And so there's a lot of different ways. This is kind of 101. Let's just
Mhm.
get started and get a good general idea on where our revenue needs to go from sales. And then, as we're going through this, we're going to find out that revenue and profit are not the same. And we're going to kind of break that down a little bit. And what does that look like?
Mhm.
So, any questions?
Not that I have.
Awesome.
No, not so far.
So, knowing your numbers, what numbers? Well, as we look at our sales number, we have gross profit, which is the money that's left after subtracting COGS. That's the cost of goods and services. And then we have our net profit, which is total revenue. And and we like to call that our bottom line. And so as we're looking at revenue, we often look at gross profit, we look at net profit. But in that equation is COGS, which is the cost of goods and services. And the higher the margin is, the higher the profitability. And so as your margins go up as far as net and gross, once you subtract your COGS and do all your fun math, obviously they go hand in hand. So you'll have a higher profitability. And so when we're talking about these terms of business and revenue, the term EBITDA comes up a lot, and so EBITDA is, and I had that here somewhere. Oh, here it is. I have so many notes, it's ridiculous. It's earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. And I'm like, wow, that's a mouthful. What in the Sam Hill is amortization? Amortization is an accounting technique used to periodically lower the book value of a loan or intangible assets over a set period of time. So if you're carrying a balance at a supply house and you've got several jobs running and you have to depend on that final payment or a uh, what they call a progressive payment coming from a project. So that is not tangible. That's money you're waiting for. So those are all taken into consideration. And even though once you finally get that, it will go into one of your profit margins, net or gross. We're able to, with creative financing, and it's totally legitimate, to lower our book value for a certain period of time, especially when you're doing quarterly taxes and those payments are going to carry into the next uh, quarterly period. Well, you can actually move them along and not try to claim the money now, if that makes sense. So those are intangible, and especially when it comes to loan. And you may have a small business loan, but when we talk about loans in the HVAC industry, it's usually from our supply house carrying a balance for materials and equipment and different things.
Right.
So again, so that is earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization. And so those are some standard business terms that like to get thrown around a lot. And so when we are looking at numbers, we often look at what's called KPIs, and that would be a key performance indicator. And so what that is, it's a metrics that we can look at our revenue, cash at hand, dispensable cash, and also look at that amortization money that you don't have now, but you know it's coming. And then we can measure that against what's going on in our company performance wise. And so key performance indicators is a must. And when you're getting started, you could go absolutely bonkers on KPIs. It is suggested for most of us getting started in business that we pick one, two, maybe three KPIs that are really good forecasters on how our business is doing and what kind of revenue we're going to be generated. Now, you've got CRMs like Service Titan that you can have it jumping through hoops and look at all of it and get reports. I've got a friend who is an absolute geek on Service Titan, and he has it jumping through every hoop imaginable. He can get reports coming in by the minute, 5 minutes, 15 by the day, by the hour, by the week, by the month, and it's like wow. And then you just sit there and glaze over on the information. So pick out a couple of good KPIs that are good indicators for where your business is now, and as you get more astute in looking at those numbers and get a grasp on the ones you're looking at, well, then you can add more as you go along, if that makes sense. So, what are those? What are some of those KPIs, and what would make sense in your business to look at? So, I have a few, and there's more. They're endless. But how about looking at your ROI on marketing? And that would include website traffic. That would include how many calls that you're getting if you're doing pay per click. So lots of different ways to look at marketing. And when we're looking at marketing, we have to talk about customer acquisition. So at the end of the day, when you acquire a new customer by way of your marketing, whichever it may be, and lots of companies use several, whether it's SEO or it's a pay per click or it's Facebook ads or we talked about last week doing door hangers or door knocking. That is a upfront cost to you. And right now, the average cost of customer acquisition is about $400.
Hmm.
And so if you acquire a customer for $400 and you want to use that as part of your matrix, so you look at the customer, which costs you $400. Now, this is an average. It varies from state to state and a contractor to contractor. So then you have to look at how much how much revenue do I need to make from this customer? One, to reach my break even. Two, to start making a profit from that customer. And then when we talk about customer acquisition and looking at your ROI on on marketing, because those two are directly related, we have to look at what's called a quick wait, which would be a customer lifetime value. So, that being said, you spent money on marketing. You have an opportunity to acquire a new customer. They responded to your marketing. You are now in their home. Then we need to look at how much money do I need to make from this customer to one, break even on my $400 acquisition, and then start to move into a profit margin from that customer. And then customer lifetime value is how much money do we think that we can make for the lifetime relationship from that customer. Now, without having a crystal ball, that is really a subjective number.
It's about
But
47 grand on average in the HVAC market.
for over what period of time?
That's just, uh, I don't know. That's just what they get for the lifetime. We looked at the numbers last year and they said that's what it was.
Yeah. So as you so 40 let's use $47,000. So you got your $47,000. So then you would have to remove from that your COGS, cost of goods and services, to service that client. And so as you start chipping away at it, that $47,000 starts to shrink and shrink and shrink and shrink. And you have to take into consideration that's probably looking at a 10-year lifespan. And it could be longer. And so then you have to take all that into consideration. Now, I wouldn't get too deep in the woods on that one, but it is something that people look at as a KPI. Another one would be, so you paid for your marketing and now you've got a customer. What customer retention looks like. And so that's the percentage of customers who remain loyal and are return customers, or they frequently spend money with you. Customer retention is important, and more with a certain subset of customers. Customer loyalty is tough, and because they're so quick, especially the younger generation, to just jump ship. Um, I've had customers that I've had a relationship with for 15 years. I was mentioning last week I work with a company in Del Rio, Texas, that the company's been around for 40 something years, and they've had customers for 38 years. That's loyalty, and so that falls squarely on our shoulders. If we give them good value and we treat them right and um, put them first, customer centric, you will keep that customer for life. And in that lifespan of having a client for 30 years, they were telling me that at the beginning of their relationship, they acquired the customer. They did some service and repair. They installed new equipment. 15-year cycle. That equipment came out, and they bought another set of equipment from them. That's golden. If we could have all our customers be like that, we would be in great shape. Another thing that we look at is called a quick ratio. And this is kind of important too, and it takes forecasting and probably a couple of other KPIs that are in place that you can use as a metric that would go towards the quick ratio. But it's the ability to meet short-term financial obligations. And so again, as we look at amortization and having a loan and or having equipment that is from the supplier on credit, we know we need to pay that, and we know we need to keep that moving. Otherwise, you won't be able to get more equipment. And so, being able to forecast the ability to meet short-term financial obligations, and this holds true for, like, not everybody can go down and buy a brand new truck. And so you might have a truck loan. You might be buying a building and you're going to have a mortgage on your building. You may be renting your building, and so you'll be having to pay rent. Those would be short-term and kind of long-term financial obligations. So that is actually a good metrics to look at to be able to forecast where you're at and give you an idea on what you need to do to be able to meet those financial obligations. That make sense?
Yep.
Awesome. So here's a big one, and that would be employee performance, uh, employee retention, which is a big one today. Uh, There is no question that we are having a shortage of skilled workers in all the skill trades across the board. Looking at employee performance and retention would be how looking at your relationship with your employee. Is that employee happy? Are they making the kind of money that they need to make to keep them on your team? Um, Training dollars will go into that too, because having an employee who is not trained up, especially with all the changes that are coming, can end up costing you money instead of making you money. So, looking at employee performance and employee retention also feeds right into employee performance in the field. What is their ratio of sold jobs? What is their ratio of turnovers? Whether that means going to um, a salesperson or a CSR, and what those closing rates are, what their average tickets are, if they're able to identify value added opportunities and do more than one repair on a service ticket. Those are all good um, KPIs on employee performance in the field.
Mhm.
Um, do you have maintenance techs out there that are young that are able to perform a maintenance in a timely manner, identify value added opportunities, and be able to flip a maintenance into a positive ticket? That would be a good KPI for a maintenance tech. And more maintenance techs are becoming a thing. And I worked with a company out in Minnesota, and we'll talk about this in the next couple sessions where I go over a maintenance called life cycle. But historically, maintenance agreements have lost money across the board, and we'll break that down as we look at billable hour and putting a truck in the driveway. But I went out there and trained with them several times, and their maintenance technicians are catching up to the service department in revenue. They're
Wow.
firing on all cylinders, and they understand what it looks like and what their obligation is to find value added opportunities and at least present them to the customer. And if they don't get the sale that time, at least it's on the table and it could possibly be the next time. And so that's going to be real important. So, do you guys have any ideas of what some other good KPIs would be when you're looking at sales in your business?
Cost per close is one of them.
Yeah,
That
we
would
have
be
a ton.
employee performance.
Yeah, cost per lead, cost per new customer, return on ad spend, everything like that.
Yep. And so
As
we
far
already
as far as sales goes, I don't know. Yeah, cost per close. What percentage you're closing them at? I don't know.
Yeah, those are good ones, and they kind of get lumped into some of the things I've talked about. And so, even though this is a sales class, there's some basic business that we need to know, so we have some goals and projections for our sales.
Good point.
Yeah, I mean, so that's why I wanted to spend some time going over some of this stuff, because this will tell you where your sales projections and goals kind of need to be, and you can kind of benchmark for the rest of your team on your expectations for them. And what's the term? You can't expect what you don't inspect. And so if you're expecting guys to go out and sell and yeah, but you don't know what the margins are or where you need to be, it's pretty feeble attempt. And so that's
Right.
why we're kind of going
Bas-
over this stuff now.
Basically pissing in the wind at that point.
All right, so um, I think that's some good starters for KPIs to look at. And again, it's good to have one or two, maybe three, to get started, to really get you to understand what the numbers are telling you, so you can make changes accordingly. And then as you get used to those, you can start adding other things. Believe me, you can get lost in it, and that's not our goal. Our goal is to get the data that we need, make adjustments and react to that data and plan based on the data, and then get it to our team. So we're all going in the same direction, and we all have the same mindset and the same goals in place. Make sense?
Right. Yeah. What I'll do is in the comments, I'll share an overview of all the metrics that we follow inside our company for our marketing campaigns. It's a lot though. I'll work it out now.
Okay. Very good. All right. So
In case anyone wants to nerd out about this.
I love nerding out. That's why I'm here. So one of the things I wanted to talk about is how much does it cost to put a truck in a driveway for an hour? And then also they go hand in hand, a simple way to figure out billable hour per technician. Now, this is the simple way to do it. And so what you would do for a billable hour would be the hourly wage of the technician times 5 divided by 0.6. It's a real simple formula. I will break it down for you.
Okay.
Hourly wage times 5 divided by 0.6. So if a technician is making $30 an hour, times 5 would be 150 divided by 0.6 would be $250. So that's what it would cost your billable hour for that technician making $30 an hour. And you guys can go ahead and get your calculators out and run that math. So 30 times 50 divided by 0.6 is 250. So
Okay.
y times 5. So that would be the matrix on looking at where your money goes, where the revenue goes. And so there's a couple ways of looking at it. And one of the ways is looking at, so the revenue from sales equals 100%. Then you have materials and equipment equaling 20%. Then you have sales and field labor, your sales force, would be another 20%. And then your overhead would come in at 35%, leaving a net profit of 25%. These are really round and arbitrary numbers, but if you had to have a way to kind of categorize where that revenue is going, that's one way to do it. When we do times 5, here's a quick way how it breaks down. We have $250. $50 goes to the tech, not to the tech's pocket, but to the tech. $50 goes to the truck, $50 for inventory, $50 for support, and $50 goes to the company. Again, these are rough numbers. It can fluctuate up and down. Now, when I say $50 goes to the tech, you have the tech's wages, you have a benefits package, you have paid vacation. When I say benefits, medical and dental, maybe uniforms, all that stuff goes to that. When I say go to the truck, trucks use fuel and they have to be maintained. So if we could take $50 per ticket away from that, set it aside for maintenance and for truck fuel, that's a good start. Now, again, these are arbitrary numbers. That could actually be a lower number depending on where you're at. You know,
Right.
California's paying almost $5 a gallon for gas, so there's that. And then so we have our inventory. Every truck has to be fully stocked in order for them to fulfill their obligation of being a service technician. So we got $50 per ticket going towards inventory. And then we have $50 going towards support. And so the question would be, what is support? So it could be broken down several different ways. So your supporting staff or your supporting cast, if you will, would be everybody in the office. You have your dispatcher, you have your CSR,
Hmm.
you've got all your non-revenue generating employees. Every single service call, there has to be money allocated towards paying for non-revenue generating staff. And that could even be the owner if he's not out actually selling or turning a wrench. And so $50 per ticket has to go towards that. Here's another thing everybody misses, which could go towards support or maybe even towards towards the tech, and that would be technology. Almost everybody now has a company phone and or a iPad. Um, some testing stuff, some of the more expensive testing stuff for them to perform their job, like Measure Quick or Combustion Analyzer, which would run a software to give you the data that you need. So technology is really prominent in our industry now, and
Right.
it's got to be paid for. And so we have to put it in a category where we can move monies into it. And then the $50 would go to the company. Um, Support can also encompass some revenue. I mean, some overhead. But then the $50 going to the company, that could also cover overhead and or could be moved directly into one of the profit margins or revenue margins. And so this is a very simple way to break it down. And then why 0.6? That is our efficiency ratio. And so that is a financial metric to measure a company's ability to use resources to generate income. And so that one denominator can change depending on the company and what they need to do to be profitable, because everybody's going to be a little different. Now, I also mentioned, how much does it cost to put a truck in the driveway for the first hour? Because that is the most expensive hour it costs.
Right.
So there's a few things that goes into this. Is that call coming from your marketing and it's your very first visit there because of a lead that came off your marketing? You have your supporting staff. So you have the CSR and the dispatcher who had to physically handle that call before you get it and make those arrangements. And so that has to be taken into account. Even though we have monies for support, that is in the long term, but that very first call is going to be your most expensive call, and dispatching you to that call to get in the driveway. So when we look at our billable hour, we can allocate some funds for that from the supporting staff, and let's just say arbitrarily we're going to add $15. So it would be $45 times 5 divided by 0.6 would equal $375 for that very first hour. That's why it's imperative when we're looking at our technician our technician performance. And so if they get dispatched, they get out to a call, they are able to identify a problem, and they go ahead and bring it to the customer, and then they make whatever they make off of that one call. They have to remember that they're trying to absorb the $375. If they can identify a second problem or a third problem with integrity, common sense, and
Mhm.
some training, that second repair, about 85% of that goes right into the profit margin because you are already there. And so if you're able to diagnose the problem, this is the problem, but I also see that something else in that line of operation is out of manufacturer specifications, and you're able to sell that repair too. You are moving most of that monies from the second repair directly into the profit margin of the revenue. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
So it's important to know now. Again, these numbers are going to be different for everyone.
Right.
But you can look at your maintenance technician that's making $17 an hour and do that same formula and be able to figure out what he needs to make for his billable hour. And then if we want to really get to the nitty gritty, we would
What
Which
was
is
going on?
something just happened. Uh,
hey,
that's
I
weird.
was just trying out a different format. Do we like? I'm trying to get him on full screen so that it's better.
I don't
So
like being in the middle. Oh, there we go.
this is way better.
That is way better.
All the attention to you. Yeah.
awesome.
We're still here
Um,
with you in spirit.
very good. So as we're looking at a billable hour per technician using that formula, uh, how much does it cost to put that truck in the driveway for the first hour? Tends to be a little more. So we now we're able to start to craft what our minimum ticket needs to be profitable. And so the way we would do that, and the not so simple terms, is you would take um, all your non-revenue generating employees, and you would add up their uh, that hourly wage altogether. Then you would take your overhead and you would add that in. Then you would take your billable hour per technician and you would take how many service calls are they running on average. You would add those up, divide it by the number of calls, and now you have um, an average dollar amount per day. And then you would just do the math. And then that you're going to find out that that's going to be much different than the simple way that I did, just to get you going in the right direction. And so once we look at all that, that's really breaking it down and really knowing your numbers well. You have to know your overhead. And so, but again, um, we can break down overhead like crazy too. You've got everything that it takes to run your company or to have an office staff and or a shop and a warehouse and that stuff. So that would be the more in-depth way to do it, taking everything, breaking those numbers down, and being able to break it down by the day, and then you just extrapolate the numbers and move them out.
Hmm.
Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And so and as we're breaking those numbers down, we've got four categories in that as well. I kind of went over those. That would be labor, profit, material, overhead. And again, we have net profit, we have gross profit. And so those are some of the categories of business. Now, labor is probably one of the toughest things that we look at or try to forecast, especially on installs. Uh, Falling short on labor, I've done it plenty of times, and I had to go back and sharpen my pencil. And then I was able to really dial in and kind of get my numbers under control, look at some good KPIs. But when I first started, I was learning, and I didn't know, and I had a pretty good idea working for all kinds of different companies and watching how they did it. Once I went to flat rate, uh, I um, I really got my numbers under control. I had some formulas that worked, and I was able to start giving flat rate pricing, and that really helped
Hmm.
as well in my business early on. And that was before the new flat rate and having technology and app based stuff. So that
Hmm.
really helped. So now we kind of went through all this stuff and we're looking at some KPIs. We've kind of figured out what our billable hour is
Hmm.
per technician. And then again, you could take all your technicians, including maintenance techs, everything, and take all their wages and run this formula, bring them all together, add them up and divide them by the number of calls, and you'd have an average company wide. But sometimes that's not fair to the maintenance techs to require them to meet a certain average ticket because you're factoring in some of the higher paid technicians. But now we can really start to track and project and do a quick ratio on what we need to do to meet our short-term financial obligations, and we can really start to get a roadmap. And
Right.
I think sometimes it's a good idea to share some of this stuff with your technicians. Uh, I've heard this time and time again. A technician goes out wherever they're at. They're the customer requires them to charge a certain amount of money, and at the end of the day, they're adding up their invoices like, criminy, I just brought in $9,500 just my truck alone, and I'm doing that every day. And they're like, yeah, man, I'm just making this guy a ton of money, and he's living in a nice house and driving a nice car, and then there starts to be animosity. But if you were to share some of this stuff with them, not everything, but some of these things on, hey, here's how it breaks down. And if you're not able to make this amount of money on a service ticket, then I'm not able to pay your vacation, give you uniforms, have a nice truck, you got a brand new iPad. I'm not able to do that. And so this is how it all breaks down. I think it's a good idea. And again, it's a need to know basis. They don't need to know everything, but like, hey, this is how the money you're bringing in breaks down. And Jimmy out there sweeping the shop, how do you think we pay for him, or the gals in the office, that are answering the phone and doing dispatching, and our bookkeeper? They don't realize that all of that has to come out of each service call they do. They think that's going right into the owner's pocket, and that's why they're living high in the hog. But it's nothing could be further from
Right.
the truth.
That's not the case. Right.
But having a good handle on your numbers and knowing where the money's going and how it breaks down really goes a long way. And so as we go forward, and it's like, okay, so I got a good handle on what I do now. You could really start to forecast and make adjustments. It's like, we're at $95 an hour to run service, and we're coming up short. Well, maybe, just maybe, you need to be at $120 an hour. Based on this, you need to be at $250 an hour. But I talk to contractors all the time. They're like, I'm at $120 an hour. I'm like, that's great if you're performing remedial tasks and they just want to pay you $120 an hour. That's great. If they want to pay you $120 an hour to clean up the job site, and you got a helper that could go do that, like Jimmy who's sweeping the floor. Well, that's great. But in the line of business, that's not going to cut it.
Right.
Excuse me. So, all that being said, and knowing where you're at, we could start to put together a solid plan for our sales team, and for our technicians and for our maintenance technicians. When they go out, they have an idea on where they need to be, and that's I keep coming back to flat rate. That takes all the guesswork out, because if you're doing a flat rate and you've got 10 employees, they're all offering the same flat rate, and so your
Right.
revenue margins are going to be exact, and you can really project and depend on where that's going to be. And then also, if there's a minimum flat rate, and that's what they're selling, well, that's what you were doing anyway. And then as we look at them being able to sell better services, Um, it just again, the higher the margin, the higher the profitability.
The other thing too is like if everybody's doing the flat rate method, um, everybody's going to have the same price across the board, right? So if let's say a tech goes out or a comfort advisor, whatever, if somebody goes out, the next person that comes out, they're going to have the same exact price. So it's always going to be exactly. I can't even think of a word, but it's always going to be the same price, right? So even if they call into the office like, oh, you were offered this, like what I'm saying is that the numbers aren't going to get skewed and the customers aren't going to see that, oh, this guy charged me, $2,000 extra, you know, it's just the same across the board.
Yes, and so the benefit of that is it creates continuity for all the technicians.
That's like kind of what I was trying to think. Yeah. Good word.
Yeah. It also everybody is going in the same direction. Everybody's saying the same thing. Everybody's making offers the same out of the same menu. And so that continuity and consistency is really what you want because it can be replicated from technician to technician to technician. And
Exactly.
you get a new technician come in, they plug right in, and there's instant continuity and dependability and then also to your point, if you have a flat rate or a menu and the lady does the customer for whatever reason has a question and calls into the CSR can find it and say exactly what you said and here's where you're at.
Right.
But the biggest thing is again the ability to have a higher ticket with honesty, integrity, and common sense and some training. And by what I mean by a higher ticket is not selling something just to upsell, because in my world, upsell is a curse word.
Mhm.
You'll hear me say this time and time again. It's finding value added opportunities and being able to communicate to the customer as you build confidence with that customer and they are confident in you, then as that goes up, sales resistance comes down. And when sales resistance comes down, the conversation is easier to have with that customer. And so if we could break down flat rate a little bit because I talked about it yesterday. Traditional flat rate is
Mhm.
good, better, best. So you got three categories. And human nature tells us that most people throw out the top, throw out the bottom, and they go in with the middle. And if you've only got one, that's still not a choice. So our analytics shows us by having 5 options and having the numbers go up incrementally. So let's just say you've got a repair that's $1,000, and then the middle one is $3,000, and then the third one is $6,000.
Mhm.
That is a huge pill to swallow to make that jump from that amount of money to the next. By having 5, the dollar increments from the first one to the second one, from the second one to the third one, are more easy to comprehend and by showing the value, and it's easier for the customer to go up to the next level than to go to the second, the next level, having it be a $3,000 difference. So that's some of the concepts behind menu pricing, which is different than
Mhm.
flat rate pricing with a good, better, best kind of mentality.
Right. And what do you think the main differences are and the benefits and cons to both? And of course, already I know which one is best.
Is my microphone on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, so, in my opinion, having a menu is best. And I don't know if I told this story last week, but millions of dollars are exchanged hands every day in the food service industry. You go in, you're greeted with a smile. They sit you down. They hand you a menu. You read the menu and they come back and say, what should we do? They don't try to strong arm me. They don't try to bully me, except for the desserts.
Yeah, right.
They always get me when they come with the. It's like, oh, but you see, and so at no time during that process of them showing me a menu do I feel like they're forcing me into a decision. If I feel like a darn cheeseburger that day, well, by golly, I'm going to have a cheeseburger. If I feel like a filet mignon or the lobster tails, by golly, that's what I'm going to have. But at every point in that transaction, it's my decision. I am in 100% control. So when we talk about customer centric, and you got all your numbers wrapped up, and then you want to go ahead and address the customer, put them in control. They are in control. You're just taking them on the journey. Our industry forever has been a take it or leave it proposition. Mr. and Mrs. Homeowner, I know it's the hottest day of the year. Your thingamabob is broke and it's going to be $450. Take it or leave it. And meanwhile, the kids are crying and sweat's running down her brow. And she's going to take it. And you know what? It doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good at all because she felt like she didn't have a say in the matter. She was put into a corner and forced to take a $450 repair. Whereas, like, hey, Mrs. Homer, we got several options. Here's your menu. What should we do?
Right.
That's the biggest difference. But in order to get to having a menu, you have to know your numbers. You have to. Because here at the new flat rate, when we're building your menu, we've got thousands of repairs that are already in place for plumbing, electrical, HVAC, chimney service and repair, HVAC sales, and building science and IAQ. Thousands. And so we work with the customer to help them figure out these numbers that we were just talking about today. And then, and only then, are we able to build out their menu. Nothing happens before we figure out the numbers. And we
Right,
wouldn't
because
be,
if you don't even know when you break even and start making money, then you don't know what the lowest price is going to be.
yeah, yep. And so that's why the stuff that we are going over today is imperative to even get you to the next step, which would be okay, we have a sales force, we have a group of technicians, we've got maintenance technicians, we're going to release them into the world. Now we have some data to properly arm them to be able to do their job well and bring in the kind of money that we need to bring in. Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yes, very clear.
Any questions?
So we're not from the group chat.
Nothing from the group chat?
I haven't. I had one question. Now I can't remember what it was. Um, it'll come back to me. Can't think of anything off the top of my head though.
Yep. So if you're out there and you're struggling, at least be able to run this little equation. Hourly wage times 5 divided by 0.6 will give you at least a billable hour for your technician. And that's a start. And then once you figure out these other numbers, you'll know, is that enough for me to be profitable to cover tech, truck, inventory, support, and company? So but we have to start somewhere. So let's start there. And that really is a good starting point. And I work with companies all over, and that's where we start.
Right.
Got to know your numbers to know your KPIs.
Yeah.
And to know your prices.
And so let me see. I think again, I don't think customers realize what customer acquisition, client acquisition costs, and that's a big one. And where is it coming from? So we talked last week about how your door knock people are door knocking again,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's pretty easy. You're going to pay somebody an hourly wage, or you as an owner will go out and do it. And I know some owners that are. They'll go out and spend, hey, I'm going to spend 3 hours this weekend. I'm going to go pick a neighborhood. I'm going to go door knock. And at the end of the 3 hours, hey, I'm done. If I get something, I get something. Or they'll pay somebody to do it. But or a door hanger. I mean, you're talking about, you're already on a job. You buy 250 door hangers at a nickel each, and while you're on the job, you run around and hang them. If you get one customer from that, you are way ahead of that customer acquisition curve at $400. And then once you do that in concert with your other means of advertising, whatever that may be, those numbers will start to offset one another and really start to bring your marketing budget maybe under control.
Right.
Yeah.
You want to
Well,
lower your cost of acquisition and optimize and maximize the lifetime value.
yes. Yes, you'll lower your acquisition cost is going to be and then customer retention. Guys, treat your customers good and they will treat you good. Treat them like they're the only one on the planet, and when you're there, they're all that matters, and treat them like that. And don't put up a big act, and don't I see some other sales people out there, and he was filming his process, and he was, oh please, oh can I, can I park there, oh is it okay if I walk
I
up to
already
here,
know who you're talking about.
can
Obviously, I'm not going to say it, but go
can
ahead.
oh hey, do you mind if I put my booties on and come in? It's like, dude, you're groveling, and it is obvious.
It's obvious.
And then but his concept is, if you get the customer used to saying yes, 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 when you come time to ask the question for the sale,
Yeah, a
oh, they're going
letter
to
of
say yes.
compliance.
It's like, people are way smarter than that. I don't know.
This is like,
So there's a thing with trust. When you are too nice, actually you lower the trust because a person feels like you're not being sincere with another end goal of making money off of them or something like that.
Yes,
So
ulterior
actually the best way
motives.
to build trust is you have to be real. It
yeah,
shouldn't be
just
too
genuine.
sugar-coated and fake. Just genuine.
Yes.
Like,
Exactly.
And of course, you need to be polite. And there are
of
some
course.
questions you need to ask. And, if your truck leaks oil, leave it on the street. don't, don't even pull into the driveway.
Right.
And there's some questions I often ask, and we'll go over this as we're going through. So I'll often ask, I'll say, hey, do you have any pets that I need to worry about going in and out of the house? Because the last thing I want to do is chase a pet down the street, because I've done that before. That's a legit question. And people will be, yes, my dog's a bolter. He'll bolt. Let me go put him in. And another good question to ask is like, we're going to be here for the better part of the day working. Is there a restroom that you would like us to use? Because the last thing you want to do is go wandering into the master bath and, wander in on somebody or something. So there are some really good questions to ask, but,
Right.
ask them earnestly. But yeah, just treat your customer like gold, because number one, customer acquisition. You just paid $400 for that customer. Treat them like gold. But do
And
it
you know what I think is
genuinely.
also easily overlooked? Giving them a smile. Like that's one of the most powerful ways to connect with people. Just smiling when you walk in.
Yes, and we're going to talk about that. Along with a smile is eye contact. I've
And
worked
eye
with so many
contact.
technicians, and they're looking down or they're looking over. It's like, dude, look the customer in the eye. Because
Mm-hmm.
you know who looks away or looks down? Liars. Liars
Exactly.
don't look you in the eye. Look them in the eye, make contact, and we'll go over this more in depth. But there are some other things that we do when we're customer facing. I don't want to give too much of it away, but those are all great points. But before we even get to that point, we need to know our numbers. We need to get to a billable hour by technician or whatever, and then we need to figure out, is that enough for us to be profitable? And then once we get there, great. Let's figure out our pricing format and let's run with it. Take the team and go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well,
Agreed.
that is all I got for today. It went rather quick. We're
Yeah,
right up
Yeah, we're
an
at the
hitting
hour.
top of
exactly
the
one
hour.
hour. That's a good timing.
Yeah.
Cool. So for next week, um, what do you think the format's going to look like there? That way we can give them an idea for what's to be expected.
So, training day 3. I got a lot. And so I hope we don't run over. I knew today was going to be kind of light because we don't want to get all stupid in the numbers because people just glaze over and go to sleep. So, uh, sales training day 3 with John Ellis is going to consist of a service call life cycle. What does that look like? We're going to break down a service call from start to finish. From the time the marketing triggers a call, the CSR answers the phone, the technician is dispatched, they knock on the door, they go through the service call, they offer a repair, they sell the repair, they do the repair, they offer a maintenance agreement and ask for a 5-star review.
Okay.
And that's going to tie into building your process. So a service call lifecycle is going to be a process. So we can take notes, and we'll talk about where and when does it start. Where does the process start? I'm going to talk with the process too, both in the service call life cycle and then the following week as we look at a maintenance call life cycle. Is every step of the process needs to set the table for the next step in the process. That way, there's flow. Like we talk about workflows all the time when we're diagnosing and doing things. Well, this process it has to flow too, and it has to flow seamlessly. So we'll talk
Mhm.
about that. We'll talk about why having options work. We talked about that today, but I want to talk about that as it pertains to the life cycle of a service call. And always address the pain first. So we'll take that dive into addressing the pain point of the customer, and then a lot of technicians are afraid to ask for the sale
Oh
and
yeah.
ask for the payment. And there's a couple different ways to ask for the payment, and I'm gonna share those, and you could implement whichever one makes sense for you. And then objections, they're not personal. Don't get offended. You're going to have objections. And again, so how to ask for a review, how to ask for a maintenance question, and always be ready for the big question. And I'll leave that as a cliffhanger, and we'll talk next week about what's the big question.
Cool. So next week, same time, 6 o'clock p.m. Eastern. We'll all hop on and then we'll go from there. Finish where
Awesome.
we left off.
I appreciate you trusting me with your audience, and I appreciate everybody's time. I love this stuff.
Yes.
Again, one caveat: I am not a sales guru. I've just seen it done a bunch of ways, and I've kind of cherry picked and put together, a few good ways to do it.
Right. You know what works.
Right. Thank you for coming on, and we have a lot of good stuff ahead of us.
Thanks, Sean.
Bye.
See you
Let
guys.
me end it here. See ya. Bye.